So a lot of moves have been made since the NBA offseason started. The Knicks traded for Mikal Bridges. Paul George signed with the Philadelphia 76ers. We even saw Klay Thompson, a Warriors legend, switch teams and go to the Dallas Mavericks. So for today's video, we are going to throw every team into a tier list for the 2025 NBA season for what we've known this far this offseason. Obviously, there could be more moves to be made. The Utah Jazz could trade Lauri Markkanen. The Pelicans could trade Brandon Ingram. And we're going to do another 30-team ranking once the season starts, or at least closer to that. You guys will get all my ranking videos, top 30 point guards, shooting guards, top 25, under 25. That will start at the end of this month, so make sure you are subscribed. So I'm going to try to explain each tier as well so we go throughout this. So the Atlanta Hawks, their team that, in my opinion, probably got a little worse this offseason. They did add Zachary Visachet with the number 1 overall pick. They traded away DeJounte Murray, traded away AJ Griffin. I feel like they're not like a bottom tier team right now. If we are going to have, I think, at least 6 tiers, I'm going to throw an F tier in there. So we'll get to that. So I think Atlanta's probably a C tier. I wouldn't be super shocked if they end up as a play-in tournament team, but I would be shocked if they made it outside the play-in tournament. I could see them as like a 9 or a 10 seed next year. Boston Celtics, easy S tier team. They just won the NBA Finals. They basically re-signed all their guys. Tatum got the Supermax along with Jaylen Brown. Re-signed Derek White. They don't have to worry about that. Kristaps may miss the start of the season, but either way, this team will be competing for another title in the 2025 season, and they are built to go back-to-back as well. Maybe there's gonna be a little mileage with some of the Celtics playing in the Olympics, but I think they should be okay to at least be a top 3 seed in the East, and then probably be favorites once next year's playoffs start if they aren't extremely banged up by then. Brooklyn, they're going to be an F tier team this season. They are tanking, which is good. I'd rather them be in the F tier than be in the D or the C tier, what they've been over the last couple of years in the post-KD Kyrie Harden era. They traded away Mikal Bridges to the New York Knicks, and they were able to do that when they made the corresponding move with the Rockets to give them the Suns picks from the KD trade, and they got their picks back from the James Harden trade. So now they have a reason to tank, and that is fine. Give Cam Thomas a lot of run, Nick Claxton, Dariq Whitehead, and Noah Conley from the 2023 draft class, and let's just see some progression under their new head coach, Jordi Fernandez. I'm not excited to watch the Nets next year, but I'm excited about their future. I'm excited to watch some of the young guys, but also be excited for who they get in the 2025 draft. Chicago, I do think, is a D tier team. In my opinion, they're better than Brooklyn and some of the other F tier teams that we will get into, but they did move on from DeMar DeRozan. Now, if they trade away LaVine and Vucevic at the deadline, they could drop down to F tier, but they still have Kobe White, I would assume Pat Will. I think Buzelis can make somewhat of an impact in his rookie season. They got Josh Giddey as well. So yeah, if they move LaVine and Vucevic, I dropped them a tier, but I also like Jalen Smith. Like, I still think there's solid talent on this Bulls team, and there's a chance I bump them up a tier by the end of this video. The Clippers, oh man, it's weird. Like, they're definitely a better team than the Atlanta Hawks. Maybe we're gonna have to arrange some of these tiers or reword them. I probably could have broke this up into conferences, but I would have had like 8-9 tiers. I don't think we need all that. So the Clippers obviously lost Paul George. I don't think they're in the tier 1 teams in the Western Conference. I don't even think they're a tier 2 team. Obviously, Harden's getting up there in age. Is Kawhi going to be healthy for the playoffs? There's still a solid roster fully healthy, but that's such a big if. Pretty much what we've known in the Kawhi Clippers era. Charlotte, I may get some flack for this. I'm debating between F or D. I mean, they're relatively close. I love some of these logos that are being used. I mean, I love the addition of them getting Josh Green this offseason. I'm excited to watch Tijan Salam. They brought back Miles Bridges. LaMelo and Miller fully healthy should be fun. And maybe I don't think that they're going to be one of the worst teams in the league, but we may drop them to F tier. We'll see. Cleveland. I think Cleveland is right there in B tier right now. I think they're probably in like tier 3 of Eastern Conference teams. They did bring back most of their core. They drafted Jalen Tyson, got Donovan Mitchell to an extension. There's a chance they could be an A tier team, but for right now, I'm going to make them a B tier team. I don't know if I'm going to order these teams in their specific tiers. I do think Denver is still an S tier team. I know they lost KCP, but they have Nikola Jokic. They should have been the 1 seed last year, and then they lost to the Spurs at the end of the year. They did get a little bit worse, and I know they lost in round 2 in a game 7 against the Wolves, but I still think having Nikola Jokic, Murray, Gordon, Porter Jr. around them, they got young guys like Deron Holmes, Peyton Watson, Brown. One of those guys should be able to break out, or maybe Julian Strawther, or at least can somewhat replace KCP in the aggregate. So I think they're an S tier team right now, and I may drop them to A. That could change. I think Houston is actually pretty good. Houston, I think, could be around Atlanta right now in this C tier team. I think we could see major progression from their young guys. How is Şengün going to come back from the injury? But they have like a lot of young guys on this team. They have one of the deeper young cores in this league. I'm intrigued to see who makes it out of this season, because they will have to pay Jalen Green and Şengün at the end of this year. Then you wait in Cam Whitmore, Men Thompson, Fred VanVleet will be up with this contract. A lot of stuff could change in Houston. I think the Lakers are probably a B tier team as well. They didn't really have too much this offseason. They got a couple guys on the minimum. They re-signed Max Christie, added Dalton Connect, and Bronny James throughout the draft. They lost Taurean Prince in free agency. Yeah, they didn't really sign anyone. Could they make another move? Yeah, they got JJ Redick as their head coach. I think on paper, probably a B-tier team right now. I think Milwaukee's still an A-tier team. They still have a top 3 player in the league, in my opinion, in Giannis Antetokounmpo. Doc Rivers was on Bill Simmons' podcast and mentioned that Damian Lillard, when they acquired him, was out of shape. He didn't want to get hurt last year when he was in the trade talks with Portland, so he didn't really work out in the 2023 offseason, and that may indicate a bad performance in 2024. We'll see how he's going to be another year with Giannis, and I hope they're both healthy in the 2025 playoffs, because we got robbed of that this past season. I think Miami is probably at the end of like B tier. Yeah, for sure. I think they're going to be a hit or miss team this year. Jimmy Butler is a free agent in 2025. Could they move on from him? That could be a possibility. They added Khalil Ware in the draft. Hero is going to be fully healthy. Same with Bam. I'm excited to watch Nikola Jovic into year 3, but I don't see them being better than any of the A-tier Eastern Conference teams, in which we'll get to. The Jazz are probably a D or an F-tier team. If they trade Lauri Markkanen, they are an F-tier team, but I think for now, they're a D-tier team with Lauri Markkanen on the roster. I'm excited to watch Hendricks and George in year 2. Colin Sexton was very underrated last year. I think Walker Kessler will bounce back, and I do like their rookie class as well. So I think they're a D-tier team. They're probably better than Charlotte. I don't know if they're better than Chicago right now, though, with LaVine and Vucevic still there. Dallas was in the NBA Finals. I mean, they're probably an S-tier team. I may only do 2 Western Conference teams up there in S-tier, so I may have them in A-tier with Milwaukee right now. Could they be back? I mean, they did add Najee Marshall and Klay Thompson this offseason. They did lose Tim Hardaway Jr., Josh Green, and they did lose Derrick Jones Jr., who was a huge defensive impact for them. They did add Quentin Grimes. I like that move for them as well. And they do have Luka Doncic, who in my opinion is the 3rd best player in the NBA behind Jokic and Giannis. So for right now, I'm going to throw them in A tier, but that could change. The Pelicans are really talented on paper. They really are. If they don't move Brandon Ingram, this team is deep. They do have some holes at the big man spot now that they moved on from Larry Nance and the Murray trade. They lost Valanciunas in free agency to Washington. I think they're better than Houston and Atlanta right now, so I'm going to throw them in the B tier team. This may be a crowded tier for sure, but this team on paper is really good. They were basically the 7th, 8th seed last year in the play-in tournament, and we're going to see Zion play another year as kind of like a point guard role, but they do have DeJounte Murray. They could use maybe some more shooting as well, but they're a good team overall. They need another big man. I do think the Knicks are an A tier team. Like in the Eastern Conference, they're better than Miami and Cleveland on paper. They made it to round 2 this past year, and they added Mikal Bridges. They did lose Isaiah Hartenstein, which is going to be a big loss. We'll see how they replace him. Right now, it's just Mitchell Robinson and Jericho Sims. They could bring back Precious Achiuwa. They could pick up somebody like a B-Ball Paul. They could make a move at the deadline, but I do think adding Mikal Bridges on top of Jalen Brunson, who played like a top 10 guy, OG Anunoby being an elite defender, and Julius Randle being out all of last year in the second half, and this team still made it to Game 7 of round 2. I think the Knicks are an A-tier team, and I think on paper, they are better than Milwaukee right now. OKC, easy S-tier team. They may be on paper the best team in the NBA. I think I would say that. I think maybe on paper they're better than Boston. I'll give Boston a little bit more respect because they are the reigning champions, so I will give the tiebreaker to them. But OKC upgraded from Giddey to Alex Caruso. That is going to be such a big defensive impact in the playoffs next year. They filled one of their biggest needs this offseason in rebounding next to Chet, and that's Isaiah Hartenstein, who was kind of like a shooter earlier in his career with the Clippers and the Rockets. We'll see if he brings that aspect to his game to Oklahoma City. Wasn't really a thing in New York, but that could be filthy if he could space the floor as well. You add in Chet, J-Dub, Shea, Isaiah Joe, Aaron Wiggins. They drafted Nikola Topic and Dylan Jones and AJ Mitchell. This is such a good team, and I think they could have the most amount of wins in the regular season next year. They're built for it. Orlando, I think, is a B-tier team as well. I think on paper, they're better than Miami. Cleveland, I'll give Cleveland benefit of the doubt as well, since they didn't lose anybody too major this offseason, and they added Jalen Tyson. They could be in the market for another move as well. They got Kenny Atkinson as their head coach, which I like, but Orlando added KCP. Their young guys are going to improve, like Paolo and Franz and Suggs. They are going to lose Markelle Fultz, but they brought back Goga, Mo Wagner. They ended up drafting Tristan Da Silva. We'll see what Jed Howard and Anthony Black can do, extended Isaac. This is a really good team on paper, and I think if I'm ranking these B-tier teams, I'll rank them like, yeah, I think it would be like Lakers 1, I think like Cavs 2, Magic 3, maybe Clippers. I don't know. The Pelicans on paper might be better than the Clippers. And then we got like the Clippers in Miami there. Maybe I'm disrespecting Houston. You can let me know in the comments. The Blazers have a lot of talent for a team that is a D-tier team, in my opinion. Like, this is a deep team. They have a lot of veterans they can move. They did move on from Brogdon to Washington, but they could move on from Jeremy Grant DeAndre Ayton, Robert Williams, but they also drafted Donovan Clingan, traded for Denny Avdia. Scoot should be better. Sharp should be better when he's healthy. They still have Anthony Simons. This is a respectable team that's probably going to finish in the bottom of the Western Conference. So I'm going to put them in D tier. I do think the Pacers, I know they made it to the conference finals last year, but I think on paper are still behind the Knicks, the Bucks, and another team in the Eastern Conference. So I'm going to put them at the top of the B tier of these teams. Now, I do think, like, if Giannis and Dame were healthy, I still think Milwaukee would have beat them. If the Knicks were fully healthy, I think they would have beat them. But this is still a really good Pacers squad, and if everything goes right, they have the depth, they have the star power to make it to the conference finals. Hey, every game was kind of close against Boston in the conference finals, and they were missing Tyrese Halliburton for half of that. They were missing Benedict Mathurin for part of the season as well. This is a really good team, and you can let me know if I should be putting them in A tier right now. I don't want to put too many teams in A and S tier, so that's why I'm putting them as the top East team in B tier, and they're probably better than the Lakers as well, even though they lost the in-season tournament to them. Detroit, I think, got better this offseason. They added Tobias Harris. I love the Ron Holland pick. Kate Cunningham has somewhat help there. They got Malik Beasley. Fontecchio's coming back. I think they're a D-tier team for once. If I had to rank these D-tier teams right now, it's probably Chicago on paper. I don't know. I think Detroit is better than Charlotte. I don't know if that's a hot take. I do think Portland is probably better than Charlotte. Maybe I would do something like this right now. Sacramento did add DeMar DeRozan, which I love, and they're in the B tier of Western Conference teams. I think they're right there with the Pelicans on paper, but I do think that they are better than the Clippers. There's a chance I may drop the Clippers to C tier looking at this. And then do we drop the Hawks? I don't know. The Hawks still have talent. Like, they still have Trae Young. We'll see if they move Capella. I'm actually going to drop the Clippers to C tier, which is kind of crazy. The Phoenix Suns, they're a B tier team as well. I don't think they're an A tier team in the West. On paper, though, they should be better still than the Pelicans and the Kings, which is the star power in Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Beal. Now, if one of Booker or Durant gets hurt, they do not have the depth to replace them, so that could hurt them. And honestly, I do think they are better than the Clippers, but I don't know if they're better than the Pelicans and the Kings now that the Kings drafted Devin Carter. They signed DeMar DeRozan. The Pelicans ended up drafting Yves Missi and traded for DeJounte Murray. KD also just got hurt in the Olympics. Who knows? Like, KD's getting up there in age as well. There could be an injury, so we're going to do that now. It's funny. Like, this Spurs team is not good on paper. They didn't really do much this offseason. They had Chris Paul, got Harrison Barnes, and drafted Stephon Castle. I'm like, just because of Wemby. Like, Wemby is so unreal as a guy on this team. I'm going to put them in D tier, and I do think they'd probably be better than Portland, maybe relatively close to Utah right now. I don't think they're a play-in tournament team. I do think Philadelphia is the last A tier team. I'm going to put them ahead of Milwaukee, but behind the Knicks. I'm probably biased there as a Knicks fan, but I do think, like, Boston is clearly the S tier team in the Eastern Conference, and then I think it's the Knicks, Sixers, Bucks, and maybe Pacers fighting for that second spot as well in the East. I mean, Cleveland is really good on paper, but we'll see how they look offensively. Is Mobley going to break out as a power forward, or do they need to move on from Jared Allen? Toronto, people like Toronto. I mean, I guess they're kind of close to Atlanta, but I think they're kind of close to Chicago. They were not a good second half team last year with Quickly, with Barrett. I know there were some injuries out there. They added Jacoby Walter this offseason. I mean, we'll see how like a full year of Kelly Olynyk is there as well. I don't really think they're a great team. I actually think they're a D tier team, but if I do have to put an Eastern Conference team in C tier, I'll throw them in there because they're probably a little bit better than Chicago on paper. Golden State is probably like a top of C tier as well, losing Klay Thompson, but I love the additions of DeAnthony Melton and Buddy Hield. Like, those are going to be really nice. I think like the West, outside of basically four-ish teams that we're going to talk about, it's pretty much a logjam. Like, there is a good chance that the West from like seeds 3 to 11 could be separated by like 4 or 5 games like it was last year. The Wizards are going to be the other team in the F tier with the Brooklyn Nets. I do think by 1 point they'll move Kyle Kuzma. They could move Malcolm Brogdon as well. They're young. They moved Denny Avdia. They're going to be in the Cooper Flag, Nolan Traore sweepstakes next year in the 2025 draft. I do think the Memphis Grizzlies are better than any team in the B tier, so I think I'm going to throw them in A tier right now with the Dallas Mavericks. Like, they did add Zach Edey throughout the draft. We'll see how that works out, but they're going to have Ja fully healthy, Triple J, one of the best defenders in the league, Desmond Bane. They're probably going to bring back Luke Kennard. I like their head coach. Marcus Smart maybe wants to win next year after watching Boston win. Like, they're an A tier team in my opinion, and I do think Minnesota is an A tier team as well. To be honest with you, I may just kind of go something like this. Like, we got 4 Western Conference teams in A tier. We got 3 Eastern Conference teams. I think Boston and the Thunder are favorites on paper next year in their respective conferences. Now, like, looking at it right now, I'm going to kind of see, do I want to make any adjustments? I feel like Toronto and Golden State should not be in the same tier. So I may drop like Toronto and Atlanta into the D tier. But I actually do think Atlanta's not bad on paper. They might be better now that they moved on from DeJounte Murray. And I think they're relatively close to the Houston Rockets as well. So I'm going to drop Toronto. I do think Houston could be close to the Clippers and the Warriors. They went 41-41. You You'd like to think they got better. They added Reed Shepard. If there's going to be any team I'm going to drop to F tier, I mean, maybe it's Detroit again. I think Charlotte could be bad once again. I mean, we'll see if LaMelo can stay healthy. San Antonio could be bad, but I think I'm fine with that right now. B tier, like, I don't want to add another team into S tier, I think. So I think the next team up would be the Indiana Pacers. Like, you guys gotta let me know in the comments. Lakers, Pelicans, Kings, and Suns, like, how would you order those guys? Even the Warriors and Clippers are pretty close to those two teams, in my opinion. So, yeah, this is what I'm deciding on. You can roast me in the comments. Let me know what you agree with or disagree with. And, yeah, I hope you guys did enjoy the video. If you did, I would appreciate it if you drop a thumbs up. Let me know what you guys think in the comments and subscribe if you are not already. And I'll catch y'all in the next one. Peace.